This guy, Dakota Woods, is, bruh.
This ranks right on up there with One Night at Flumpty's for me. As far as anticipated games, anticipated fan-made Five Nights at Freddy's sequels.
Five Nights at the Chum Bucket looks really awesome. I love this. I think this is one of the best games by far. If not the best game by far, in my honest opinion.
I just had to get more of this game into my system because it's actually really well made. So thank you everybody who recommended and who wanted to see more of it. I'm gonna play more of it right now!
Well, there goes my own horn. Also, just as an afterthought, you guys should follow me on Twitter. Thanks. Hey everyone, my name is Dakota Wood, but most people call me Aerosync or Sync or some variation upon that these days. And just over 2 years ago, I released Five Nights at the Krusty Krab, which was a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game based on SpongeBob, kinda. I developed the game to get over some depression that I was going through at the time. And it kind of kick-started a weird year for me for 2015. So, after making the game, I kind of found myself stuck in a bit of a rut until I made a second game in, I think, April, maybe? It might have been, yeah, April. Which was Five Nights at the Chum Bucket. And Five Nights at the Chum Bucket was basically me going, well, what if I took the original game, made it good, and like actually tried to get everything to be nice and good looking and functional. And I did that, and it took a considerable amount longer, but it worked really well, and people seem to like it because the game now, almost 2 years later, has 1 million page views and 550,000 downloads, which is kind of insane to me. I know that this isn't something, it's not just because I'm amazing at making games or anything, it's because it's a Five Nights at Freddy's game and it got a considerable amount of exposure through like Markiplier and a bunch of other YouTubers who I'm sincerely so thankful for. But it's still crazy to me that it got this popular, and I kind of abused that privilege that was placed upon me when I was such a jerk about the third game, which never ended up coming out for various reasons, which is what I'm going to talk about in this video. So it might be a bit long, but I'm going to be going over a lot of the stuff people wanted me to talk about when I first cancelled it, such as what the story was going to be, what the mechanics would have been, how it would have played, how it would have looked. I'll be showing some assets that I made, but I unfortunately might not be able to show a lot of them because software changes and I can't actually open a lot of the files anymore. So there won't be any gameplay footage, but I can probably show you 3D model screenshots and textures and things. So, when I finished Five Nights at the Chum Bucket, I kind of ended it in such a way that I was like, right, there's no way I can continue from this, the protagonist is dead. And to me, if the protagonist is not the protagonist, then you can't continue the series. I mean, no one else has ever done that, at all, ever. Five Nights at Freddy's itself has a completely different protagonist in every game, and other series like Gears of War have completely swapped out their incredibly iconic protagonists for mediocre characters, and I guess it doesn't work in that case, but in some cases it does. So, I kind of did that specifically because I was like, well, if he's dead, people aren't going to ask for another one, right? Because it's finished. But people did, and because a bunch of people were announcing their third games, like 1 week at Flumpty's, there was a Five Nights at Warriors game that got announced, and a bunch of others. I kind of got swept up in that because all of my friends were doing it, so I was like, well, I should probably do it too. And so I kind of formulated a weird excuse for why a third game could exist in my head, and that excuse was, well, if the protagonist is dead, maybe they get stuffed into an animatronic and the phone guy becomes the protagonist, and for some reason the old protagonist is evil as a robot, yada yada yada, they try and kill them. which makes no sense because if they became a robot, why would they try and kill their friend? But whatever, it's a horror game, kinda. So that's where Hammerhead was born from, because Squidward is the one who kills the protagonist in Chum Bucket. I was thinking, well, maybe the robot that he becomes is like a modification of Squidward, which is why in the secret ending, Squidward is the one who attacks the phone guy and presumably drags him to rock bottom, which is the setting of the third game that never happened. So the game was going to be set in the city of Rock Bottom, which appears in like one episode of SpongeBob or something, and everything's backwards down there or some weird shit. But I was just going to set it in a power station because I always tried to steer as far away from it being SpongeBob as possible, because I was like, well, SpongeBob characters is pretty cool, but I always tried to make it serious, and no one seemed to get that I wanted it to be a serious like horror series. But that's because it was SpongeBob, and SpongeBob is not an innately serious thing, which is why everyone wanted me to fill it to the brim with memes, which I'm fine with memes, just not when I'm trying to be serious. And so yeah, the setting would be in like a power station, and Hammerhead would drag you down there for some reason, and the ending of the game was basically just, there was two endings, and I don't know how they were differentiated between. So in the end, either the player would escape, and that would be the bad ending, where, you know, it's the good ending, but nothing gets resolved, or you would get the true ending, I guess, which is where the player is dragged back down into rock bottom, and for some reason they have to become a robot as well, and so then that's how you find out who Hammerhead really was, because he's a robot. You guys are Robros now. That was basically the whole ending of the story. It's just like, oh yeah, now they're Robros, and maybe there's a secret night where you play as Hammerhead and the other guy stalks you or something like that. I don't know. I didn't think it very well through. But onto the actual like game itself. So the game kind of had like two passes to it. The first pass kind of also had two phases to it. Originally, it was going to be set in like a derelict, like just one facility that was like crumbling down around you. There'd be like a tunnel collapse to one side that would just lead out to like an open sea floor. And so there'd be a big like generator room at the front of the facility, and like a bunch of like hallways that would snake back to the player at the back. And what would happen would be Hammerhead would come down these hallways in a random fashion, kind of like Springtrap does in Five Nights 3. And he would either enter your room and you'd have to do something to get him out. I don't know what it was at that point. Or he would just try and like kind of tease you. Like I had ideas where he'd like swim past this big glass like window in front of you, or he'd like run screaming through the room and just to jump scare you, and then he wouldn't even do anything by that. Or maybe he'd be like knocking on the roof or something. I don't know. There was just a bunch of weird shit that I was like, I'm gonna put this in just so it's more interesting. And I don't have to add more animatronics because I just wanted there to be one. At some point I decided, well, I kind of want to bring the others back. And so originally I was just going to have them come back as like flickering images on a computer monitor, because there was going to be cameras that would you could interact with in a diegetic environment. There wasn't going to be a pop-up for them. It would just be in the environment. You click on buttons. So the original characters, SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick, would just appear on that randomly for no reason, just because I thought it looked cool. But eventually I was like, well, you know what? Why don't I just have them as like Nightmare versions? Because Nightmare animatronics are a thing, and Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is coming out, and blah blah blah. And so what I did was I looked at the evil within and saw, oh look, those zombies have like barbed wire and stakes all in them. Why don't I just do that? And so I created this disgusting looking barbed wire Squidward that I showed off in like one teaser. And the idea with these barbed wire animatronics would be that they'd come down in their own fashion, but you'd have a light that you could shine at them, and they'd return to their starting position basically. So what you'd do is you would look very closely into the darkness, kind of like how you can't really see Freddy in Five Nights 1 until he's in your room. And so you'd notice, you'd try and see them in the darkness, and if you could see them, you'd flash their light, and then they'd run away. That was kind of the whole thing with them. And it was cool. Like, it was actually like a good concept, but there was a point where I got enough done with the programming side of the game that I was like, well, I kind of want to go and do some art for this, right? And this was around the time that Soma, the game by Frictional, the people who made Amnesia and Penumbra, if anyone played that one, I did. I loved Penumbra. Anyway, the people who made those games, they made a new game called Soma, which was a underwater horror game, like Amnesia, basically. And I really loved the art style in that. Like, it looked to me like they had taken Bioshock and put it in the future, which was super cool. I love Bioshock. And so I kind of tried to copy that art style to the point where I'd be like analyzing how they did each of their assets. And I try and do that myself, but I realized that the stuff I'd already created that was finalized, like Hammerhead's model, wouldn't work with this. Something was like, well, I kind of need to just start again, and so I scrapped literally everything that I'd done to this point, which was a considerable amount. If I hadn't scrapped this, I probably would have released the game by the time I cancelled it, I guess. And I so everything at that point changed. I went back to one animatronic. I might have planned to do more, but I never actually started modeling any of them. I actually think I was going to do original animatronics, like completely original, nothing from SpongeBob. But the mechanics kind of, if I can remember this from... So there was a really complicated computer system that I'd been developing for the game that was just running off of random, like, basic scripting things that I just wired up really well, actually. If I do say so myself. So basically everything would be controlled by like a tablet in front of you, basically, and you'd be able to look at the cameras, switch off all of the power in the whole like complex, or give yourself an adrenaline boost. And I think what the mechanics were there were some animatronics that you would need to shut off all of the power so that they couldn't see you, and there were some animatronics that couldn't attack you until you were very fatigued. So that would kind of be like your power meter from the first Five Nights at Freddy's, because it would drain much more rapidly. And before you reached like even halfway into the night, you would need to adrenaline boost yourself to ensure that you didn't die from them, because once your fatigue hits 0, you would die or something like that. And the whole game would kind of revolve around being strategic with when you use these boosts. So if you reset too early, then you would run out of booster shots before the end of the night. But if you reset too late, something might happen and it would drain faster. Actually, that's what it was. If you had the lights off, you would become fatigued more faster, because when it's nighttime, you sleep, right? That makes sense. I think. And so basically that was it. That was the whole game, really. The new Hammerhead model I based on like a diving helmet, like a diving suit, like a Big Daddy from Bioshock, and I really liked it. I thought it was so cool. I spent so much time making it. But then I posted a screenshot of it, and no one else liked it, which was kind of a problem, because the main reason I was making a third game was not for me, but because everyone else wanted it, and I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. So I was like, well, if people don't like it, then fuck them. I guess I'll just make another one then. And so I started a third Hammerhead model, which was kind of like the old one, but in a more more realistic style, and I just gave up with it because I'm a lazy shit. And that's it. That's the sad fate of Five Nights at the Krusty Krab 3 and why it never came out. And I feel like making this video now, 2 years on from the start of the first game, or like a year on from when I cancelled it, because it's a door that I need to close. And since Five Nights at the Chum Bucket has just hit 1 million page views, I figured people deserve to know, and it's time to close that door. It's time to close this chapter of my career, I guess, since I've started work on a new project that I will hopefully be able to show within the next 6 months. Probably less, but hopefully I'll have something properly to show within 6 months. On top of that, if anyone wants to ask me anything, I'm not officially doing an AMA, but like, if anyone wants to ask me anything, just let me know in the comments. If there's enough questions, I'll consider doing another video on it, but maybe not. Just depends on how much people are actually interested. I know I'm kind of old news at this point, but it really makes me happy to know that there are still people commenting on the game on in-game job. There's still people sending me friend requests, even though I'm never online to talk. It kind of really humbles me that people actually cared so much for a short while, even if it was because it was a Five Nights game and not necessarily just because it was a good game. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much everyone who stuck by me during the game's development. Thank you to my friends from high school who I'll likely never see again. Thank you to Jonachrome for being just a really great friend, really good support within the community. Thank you to all of the YouTubers who played the game, especially Markiplier, because I know he gave the biggest signal boost to it. And just thank you everyone. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a really pleasant day, and I hope to see you all in the future. Goodbye.